All right, the Eagles get off to a slow start. They're down 17-0, and then they hit Deshaun Jackson with the long ball. KC Joyner, I know a lot of people anticipated that. They thought, yes, you're going to see a long ball to Deshaun Jackson, but I want to get your take on how they used Deshaun Jackson in that game yesterday, because he wasn't just the Deshaun Jackson one-trick pony. They used him in a variety of ways yesterday.
They did. They wanted to put Washington on notice that you're going to have to account for speed, because the one thing the Eagles didn't have, I'm an old advocate of the Al Davis days of where he used to say that Cliff Branch speed kills. That was the idea with for their passing game, was you have to be worried about our vertical game. That's exactly what they were trying to tell Washington. You're going to have to worry about the speed, not just over the top when we're sending them on post routes and corner routes. You're going to worry about that. You're going to have to worry about this everywhere. And when you as a defense have to worry about somebody with that sort of speed, you got to pay a lot less attention to guys who can get open and catch the ball like Ertz and Jeffrey. So I think it was a great way to utilize Deshaun Jackson.
Now, we didn't see, they have a lot of weapons, but we didn't really see, multiple guys have big games. I mean, some modest games there, but yesterday was really Jackson. But what did we learn about the Eagles' offense moving forward and what they can do with the weapons they have?
I think that now they've got the ability, because what I liked about it was not just that they were sending Jackson deep, but I worried in past years sometimes that Wentz was either too aggressive or not aggressive enough. I didn't get the sense that there were times I'm breaking down tapes and I'm seeing guys who are open deep, and sometimes he wasn't taking the chances, and other times he's taking chances. Yesterday, I liked the mix of when he dropped back there, he said, hey, we're going to go deep, like on the first touchdown pass. It's what they call a levels concept. They were running a drive, dig, post. And he was open on the post, and there were times in past years where I've seen Wentz drop back and go, okay, I'm going to go through the jig pattern. I don't quite trust myself in the post. I think you saw a Djax there. I could just let this thing fly, and maybe I'm going to overthrow him, but he's so fast I'm probably not. And if I do overthrow him, then it's incomplete. But he's willing to take that chance. Whereas when you have an Alshon Jeffrey sitting on that post route, I don't know that you're quite as convinced he's going to get open. So I think it made a difference for Carson Wentz.
Casey, what did you think of the usage of running backs? We spent some time today discussing the oddity, I guess, of Darren Sproles being the lead carrier at a time. First quarter, was that guesswork maybe for the defense? And what did you make of how they then used Jordan Howard later in the game and Sproles and Sanders first?
I think they wanted to also threaten speed. I think they wanted to say, we're going to use speed on your defense. I think they thought, because when I broke down the run blocking, I found that Suwala had a terrible game. I found that Jason Peters missed a couple of plays when he had gotten to space and things, and I think they realized that they can't really go – I don't think they wanted to go toe-to-toe at first and say, we're going to go ahead and punch you guys in the mouth on the ground. I think they said, okay, we've got to use speed. We've got to use things to get this defense a little wore down, and then we can start going after it. It's kind of weird because usually you think you get to power the defense and then use speed. I think the Eagles thought the opposite way. We've got to use speed to get these guys wore down a bit, and then when they're wore down, now we can use power to finish them off. So an interesting concept, but, hey, it worked.
Casey, also a lot of questions about the defense. Did we underrate the offense of the Redskins? Or what did you think about the Eagles' defense? I know we've had this discussion a lot about Schwartz. He doesn't blitz all that much. But were you watching them yesterday and concerned about the Eagles' defense at all?
One thing I wasn't concerned about is the run defense. Washington didn't run the ball very often, and the reason they didn't is usually, I don't know if you're talking a running game and you're talking, say, an offense is having trouble running the ball, it's normally one or two guys in the offensive line, and it might be one or two defensive players who are usually causing the most trouble. Yesterday, the Eagles, this was beautiful. Their entire front seven was beating blocks at varying times. It was up and down the line of scrimmage. You've seen different people win, and every Washington offensive lineman and tight end was getting beat at varying times. It wasn't just one thing. It was a complete domination. I think it's why Washington coming into the game said, we're not even going to bother putting Adrian Peterson on the field because we know we can't run against these guys. I love that, and I love the second half play of the defense in the secondary. I didn't like the first half where they gave up those two easy touchdowns, and both of those were preventable if they just did what they were supposed to do on those plays.
Yeah, and I know that, the Eagles got off to that slow start on the defensive side of the ball too, but in the second half, their pressure really seemed to get to Keenum. They didn't bring him down, but a lot of quarterback hits, which led to him rushing some throws. And that seems the way that we anticipated this Eagles defense to go. But losing Malik Jackson, do you think that kind of will be something that they feel? Will that be something that is noticeable?
I think it will be. I'm not so worried about it in the ground game because the Eagles were doing a lot what they did last year. They're just winning. They tend to win point-of-attack battles on defense all over the place, and you don't like to lose anybody, but they've got enough people in their front seven to where they'll be fine there. The pass rush, a little more concerned about it because I want to see that the gut pressure and such. But yesterday, even their pass rush,
especially against that Washington offensive line.
Yes, the Washington offensive line. They were able to get when. The Washington was getting to the point in the second half where I didn't think they were going vertical. I think they just said we can't go vertical. The funny thing is that I think they said we can't go vertical, and we know we can't run the ball. And it was getting to the point to where they were just necessarily predictable because the Eagles said fine. Because on the touchdown pass to McLaurin, the safety I haven't seen the all 22 yet. It's not yet up on NFL Game Pass, but I believe what happened is the safety just left his deep coverage and left Rasul Douglas in one-on-one coverage. If the safety had been back there, you take that route away, and if you just bother tackling Vernon Davis, and that was 31% of their passing production came on those two plays, which are mistakes on defense. You take those away, Washington had no vertical game and not really much of a passing game, and it was a complete domination if you just take those two plays out of it.
Casey, we know that most of the damage that the Eagles did offensively came on third down. Carson Wentz was, I believe, 12 of 13 or 12 of 14 and threw all of his touchdowns on third down. In some cases, we saw him go out of the pocket to make plays, but I also thought it looked like he was well protected. Did you see that too from the offensive line against guys like Kerrigan and Montez Sweat, that they were that they kept those guys off Carson?
They did, and it resulted in, if you take third down plays for Carson Wentz yesterday, when he's throwing the ball vertically. He had six plays where he threw the ball vertically. That's where it's going 11 or more yards downfield. He was 5 of 6 on third down vertical passes for 155 yards, 25.8 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, a perfect passer rating. I mean, a perfect QBR. You couldn't have asked for better. And, again, those are in third down situations where the defense was probably expecting you to pass, and you're still going back and going vertical and having to give the quarterback probably 3 seconds worth of time to throw. So I think that speaks exceptionally well for the pass blocking.
KC Joyner, ESPN Senior NFL Insider, with us here on the Sports Bash. And don't forget, Casey, on Friday we'll preview all of this week's action at 5:15 as we get you ready for week number 2.
Casey, is there someone who stood out? I mean, we've talked a lot today about Carson, about Deshaun, some of the obvious names. Is there someone who stood out on tape from the game on either offense or defense from the Eagles that played well and may have gone under the radar?
Lane Johnson. He did a fantastic job in both pass blocking and run blocking. He was the one Eagles offensive lineman who I didn't grade as having lost a run blocking point of attack battle. I think he did a fantastic job there, and I think the Eagles, because they had problems on the left-hand side of their line. I mean, I mentioned Suamala had some plays back. They had trouble on the right guard, too. When they put Vaitai in there, he had some problems. So they've got to get the guard position fixed. But if you've got Lane Johnson playing as well as he did on the right side, you're going to be okay.
Well, keep in mind, Vaitai was playing like half the game because they were really keeping Brooks on a pitch count due to that Achilles injury. So we'll see if Brooks gets more as we move forward against Atlanta. We'll preview that game with Casey on Friday at 5:15. But right now, let's look at these games from Sunday. You get a couple quick thoughts from you, Casey. Cleveland, many people thought that was the team to watch this year. It was worth watching because it was a bloodbath, but the other way, Tennessee went in there. It wasn't the game. They didn't go to Tennessee. Tennessee traveled to Cleveland and whipped them. What do you make of that?
I make of that the most concerning thing about that was that you saw the Browns sideline, because the game was close until the third quarter, and even going into the fourth quarter, still competitive. But once the thing started to go south, you could see the fans knew there was a problem. You could see Baker Mayfield knew it. You could see it on the sidelines. The thing Cleveland kept talking about, we've changed our culture. We're now a winning culture. We expect to do better. We expect to win. That's not what it looked like there. And if they don't get that problem fixed, I don't care how much talent they have. If you're going to believe that things are going to go bad against you, they will.
I feel like each week we'll probably talk about Miami being really bad, but Baltimore, were they really good, or was Baltimore just that Miami that bad? Lamar Jackson had a huge day. Marquise Brown, welcome to the NFL.
Yeah, Hollywood, my gosh, it was incredible. You look at the numbers that Lamar Jackson, now, mind you, Lamar Jackson last year, when you looked at his passing, both his passing yardage, and you look at how he looks on tape, his totals weren't very good, and he wasn't very consistently productive, and his passing was incredibly inaccurate. And yesterday, he looked like the second coming of, I don't know, pick a vertical passer, Gerald LaMonica. I mean, he was fantastic. But it was Miami. Miami's just that bad. And mind you, if the players quit on their coach and their organization in week 1, can you imagine how long that season's going to be?
What's the spread this week? Like 17, I think I was against New England in that game week 2. Atlanta, a lot of people liked it. I know, Jeff, you picked them to win the division. A lot of people thought this would be a really good Atlanta team. They really struggled to move the ball against Minnesota, who, Jeff, as you pointed out, they only threw the ball, 10 times in the game?
Yeah, he completed 8 of 10 passes for 98 yards. And $84 million guaranteed.
Yeah, and that's what Minnesota wanted to do. Minnesota wanted to get back to, they didn't want to do all that dink and dunk stuff they did last year. They wanted to get back to running the ball, go vertical if you're going to pass, and play tough defense. And Atlanta just walked in there against a team that knew what kind of defense it wanted to play. I still like Atlanta a lot because Atlanta's got a very favorable defensive schedule the rest of the way. That might be one of only 2 or 3 really tough schedule defenses that they're going to face this year. So I think they're going to be fine. But, yeah, I mean, it speaks badly for them that they played so bad.
Interesting his remarks on Isaac Seumalo, because, again, I said from the naked eye, and I haven't watched the tape yet, that I thought he played fairly well. I ran it by somebody else. They thought he played fairly well. Had a really good – I think Adam Kaplan was on with you last week and said how the coaches were really pleased with his progress. So I'll be interested to watch the tape to see.
Yeah, he actually mentioned that the whole left side of the line was a little shaky.
Yeah, and the Eagles ran the ball well statistically, and obviously they protected Carson, so that'll be interesting to check that out.
All right, let's bring them back. All right, we were over it. Let's get to Buffalo and the Jets. The Jets were up 16-0 in this game and then lost it. What happened?
Well, what happened is that their coach, McDermott, he's a former collegiate, a prep wrestling champion. He's a guy who, he actually can go toe-to-toe in the ring and or on the mat, as it were. I think he brings that kind of mentality to his team that they'll just keep fighting. And Adam Gase hasn't quite yet imbued whatever his mentality is into his team. So I just think it's a matter of that they played 4 quarters and New York played 3.
McDermott and Mike Tomlin, I believe, were teammates on William and Mary's football team, if I'm not mistaken. If it's not, I know it's one of the same. They went to the same school and played on the same team.
Now, what did you think of the way they used Le'Veon Bell yesterday?
I thought it was interesting that they wanted to get him involved in the passing game more. And again, Gase, when he was at Miami, he was one of the most run-heavy coaches in the league, so you would have thought that connection would lead to that. But I think he's realized that I've got to – in fact, that's the thing about defensive coordinators. They said about the big difference between James Conner and Le'Veon Bell for Pittsburgh. It's that Conner's got just as much talent, but they utilize Bell in different ways, and I think Gase has realized the same thing. I can put this guy in the slot, and I've got bad guys in the backfield I can use too, so it's like having another receiver.
All right, now explain to us, KC Joyner, L.A. beats Carolina 30-27. They didn't have the leading passer, they didn't have the leading rusher, or the leading receiver in the game. How'd they score 30 and win?
Because Carolina's defense is not that good. I think that's a big part of it. And again, you've got Gurley fumbling the ball. You've got a lot of problems there. But I also think that you've got a really good play caller on the LA side of the ball. You've got McVay's a really good play caller and can get some things done. And I think Carolina's defense, they're good. Carolina. That's the reason I was talking about Atlanta and why their schedule's so favorable. It's matchups like Carolina. I think Carolina's going to get in a ton of shootout games this year, and they don't have the offense to keep up in that situation.
All right, Jacksonville at home. They lose their quarterback, but they give up 40, I guess. And then Tyreek Hill goes out for Kansas City, so tough loss for them. But the beat goes on for their offense.
Yeah, I happen to have Sammy Watkins in one of my fantasy lineups, so I wasn't unhappy to see that happen. But Watkins, mind you, the thing that's troubling about Jacksonville is blown coverages in their secondary, because everybody talks about their talent, but you don't play defense as well as they did a couple of years ago if you can't have people be where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be there. And there were a couple of times when they blew coverages, missed tackles and stuff, and it reminds me of where they were late last year when they just weren't playing to their talent level. They don't do any better than that. I know it's Kansas City putting up 40, but if Jacksonville keeps playing defense like that, other teams are going to be scoring a lot against them too.
All right, L.A., the Chargers win at home. The Colts travel. Gave them a fun floor, which is interesting because this is a team that has really historically struggled to run the ball. But Reich, had a nice game plan yesterday, it seemed. But 174 for Marlon Mack.
The Colts have the makings of one of the top 10 offensive line. It wasn't last year, but they've got the makings of it. They've got the talent for it, and they can run the ball. So, they can get by with better than they could have a couple of years ago when they were really a pass-heavy team. They've got the defense to do it. They've got the running game to do it. I have a feeling they're going to be more competitive than people think. But it says something for the Chargers, too. Hey, Melvin Gordon's out, and Austin Eckler, people go, Melvin who? Because Austin Eckler, who was one of the most explosive running backs last year in the metric I have, good blocking yards per attempt, he showed that again yesterday. So I think the Chargers are going to be just fine.
Yeah, big game from Eckler, which I guess Melvin Gordon's sitting there watching like, are you kidding me?
Leverage going out the window as we speak.
Absolutely. All right, Cincinnati gave Seattle a fight, and Seattle, they got all these new toys, Clowney and Ansah, and they were into a fist fight with Cincinnati as Dalton threw for 420, but not enough.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Cincinnati is it used to be Marvin Lewis, and they're going to be a ground and pound team, and they're going to throw the ball some. They don't have A.J. Green, and they come out there. John Ross, what he did yesterday, I know it's because he's back at his hometown and such, or he's from Washington, and so I don't know if it's because he's back home or whatever it is. But his metrics last year were atrocious, abysmal. He was easily the worst qualifying wide receiver in the NFL last year, and yesterday he looks like, just again the second coming of Cliff Branch. But the Seattle secondary was blowing coverages left and right, too, and they're getting beaten coverage. And I think it says something. The Legion of Boom is long gone because if that secondary keeps playing like that, Seattle's going to need to run the ball 600 times this year, 700 times this year, because they can't trust that secondary.
Don't tell me that. I have Russell Wilson on my fantasy team, man. ESPN senior NFL insider KC Joyner. Dallas was dominant over the Giants. Are the Giants that bad? Did the Cowboys look that good? What'd you make of this 35-17?
It speaks well for where both teams are. I think Dallas is that good. I think the Giants are that bad. The Giants are transitioning to it being a different team. They're going to get better down the road, but right now Dallas is just that good. And it says something though. Dallas, where they are in Week 1 right now, if they keep playing at that level, they're going to be that could be a 12-win team because they've got a really good defense. Obviously Zeke's where he should be. Now they have a two-headed running backfield if they want with Pollard. Witten scoring a touchdown, Gallup looking like he's a vertical threat. You add all of it together, maybe they've got a much more complete offense than what they've had the last couple of years.
All right, let's go to the tie. What you learned from this tie? Detroit, they blow a big lead. Kyler Murray didn't play well, or Tyler, as Dick Stockton called him, meant multiple ties in the game yesterday.
I think Kyler Murray, it was going to take. He didn't look good in the preseason either. He really struggled, and I think he got to a point in the fourth quarter where it was, rather than just try and be, I think he was trying to be a little, I don't want to say careful, but I think he was trying to be a little, I don't want to make mistakes. I want to run this offense. And by the countdown fourth quarter came and you're down by that much, it's just, okay, now I'm just going to go make plays. You can't get by winging it in the NFL on a consistent basis, but I think that him winging it worked better for him. So maybe if I'm Cliff Kingsbury, I'm saying, why don't we just wing it a little while, and then we'll get to the point where you're going to run a more efficient offense down the road. Maybe they have him wing it more often, because if they do...
He admitted that his offense was a little too cute early in the game. He kind of said that afterwards.
Yeah, they just need to go more vertical and trust Kyler.
All right, San Francisco, I was surprised by this. I thought Tampa with Arians would be much better, much more disciplined, and Winston was Winston, and the 49ers were able to capitalize on that and win.
Arians talked again and again this offseason about, I don't mind interceptions in the right situations. He knows if you're throwing vertical, you're going to throw interceptions. What he minded was exactly what Jameis Winston was doing yesterday, which is what he's been doing for years, is making really bad decisions, really stupid decisions at the wrong time in games and doing things he really shouldn't do. Those were preventable errors that caused Tampa to lose that game. And if he keeps doing that, Arians eventually will move to somebody else at quarterback.
By the way, someone just texted me, why do we still have ties in the NFL? Well, they play an extra quarter now, and then nobody can score in the game. It's because you don't think two teams are going to be as bad as those two. That's why.
And second year in a row, though, right? A season-opening tie? Didn't they have one last year in the opener? There was a tie last year. I think it was the Steelers. Not the reason. I'm pretty sure there was a tie last year.
Steelers-Browns.
Steelers-Browns, yeah.
Speaking of the Steelers, they didn't show up last night. Was that a Tomlining or was that a Patriots ass whipping?
That was the Patriots. That says as much about the Patriots as it does about the Steelers. But I'll tell you, the Steelers, the problem for them, Dante Moncrief is trending on Twitter, and for all the wrong reasons, because that receiving core just took such a huge drop-off with Antonio leaving. Antonio wasn't great on a yards per attempt basis last year at any level. Short, medium, deep, you can pick it, and he wasn't really that good. But, Juju can only do so much, and James Washington didn't show up. Moncrief doesn't show up. And I know the Patriots are really good secondary and such, but I'm really worried about the Steelers. They wanted to run the ball more, but you can't. You got to be able to pass better in that because if their receiving core is as bad as it showed last night, I thought they were a strong Super Bowl contender. They won't make it out of the division if they can't pass him better than that.
What about? I know they drop passes, but Big Ben kind of looked like he could play left guard lately. Are you seeing like a quarterback who's just like stopped conditioning anymore and just is going to be himself?
It very, very well could be that he needs to. He looks a little more like the bus on the commercials we saw yesterday. Maybe you need to play some flag football, you know?
Possible, yes, man. All right, 2 tonight. Let's get your quick thoughts. Houston at New Orleans. This one has the makings of a fun game.
It does, and if I'm Houston, I really want to make it a high-scoring game. I want to go ahead and try and get into a shootout contest because New Orleans doesn't want to get into a shootout contest anymore. They've been working hard to get away from that the last couple of years, and it's just something that they would rather be a run-heavy and throw vertical as a counterpunch. If I'm Houston, I want to make Drew Brees throw the ball a lot because I think I can make him make some mistakes, and I think I can make more plays with my offense than he can with his. So I'd love to see a high-scoring game. I think Houston could win that. I still think New Orleans is going to win, but I think if I'm Houston, I've got to turn to that 50-50 prop.
And then Denver at Oakland, the whole craziness that's going on with Oakland out there. But, everybody just zones in on that. Have they improved? Are they any better? Or is this game, Denver on the road?
Well, we thought Pittsburgh's locker room was going to be better after Antonio left, and look what happened last night. And it's the hardest game for you to pick this week. I pick Oakland to win the contest because it's at home and it's kind of a toss-up, so I figure the home team should get the edge. I don't know if Antonio Leaving's going to make that team a more cohesive team or a worse-off team. So I think it's going to be interesting to see where they are because that might have fractured the locker room in a way that can affect them down the road, and I'd like to see how they're going to, because if they come out and lay an egg tonight, I think it's going to be a long season for the Raiders.
KC Joyner's back on Friday. He'll preview all of the action, including Eagles and the Falcons, and, of course, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, Casey, enjoy the football tonight.
Thank you. You too, man.